everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Tinfoil Tales. Tonight we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to be joined by my guest, Fox. Fox is from Conspiracy Soldiers podcast. We're going to do a little bit of a joint venture here tonight, dive into some topics that may be a little controversial, may get some feathers ruffled, but that's kind of how I like to do things around here when we start to dive into these old conspiracy podcasts. Before we do that, if you've ever had an experience or a story you'd like to talk about, you can send me an email at tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com. That's tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com. Be scheduled for a future episode. Find us on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, X, whatever else. If you haven't been on our YouTube or if you just listen to YouTube, we are also on all the other streaming platforms. If you want to leave us a review, the 5-star review helps the visibility of the podcast. So if you want to leave us a review, you can do whatever you want. I mean, I don't really care, but the 5-star is basically the only one that really helps benefit the podcast. But I think now we're going to bring Fox on. So if you want to dive into this rabbit hole with us, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Everyone out there listening, this is a joint venture between Tinfoil Tales and Conspiracy Soldiers. So hope you guys enjoy what we got going on today.
Yeah, what's up? I call you Brandon?
Yeah, I go by Brandon.
Okay.
So yours says Fox, so do you go by that?
Yeah, that's my last name. My podcast is kind of military themed, so I just go by my last name, you know.
Mm-hmm. I actually just had an interview with someone 2 nights ago that was in the military, but he'd encountered something when he was at Fort Polk down in Louisiana.
I was down there. Was he infantry?
He was in the Army, so I'm assuming so, but they were doing some sort of training, and for 11 years, he thought he encountered a 9-foot-tall demon, but now he thinks it's a dog man. It's, they're out in the woods, and all he could really see, he thought was horns sticking on its head, but now he thinks it was its actual ears, but he was pretty much face to face with it.
I've heard some shit like that about Fort Polk, man. It seems to be some weird stuff going on, and that's down there. That's down there in Louisiana, you know, voodoo country.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
they have their own little lifestyle and weird things down there. For years, they've had on the cryptid thing, they've always had people say werewolves, and they've called them rougarous or something like that. So there's been all sorts of weird folk tales and swamp monsters and all sorts of things I've been looking into. So that's what this podcast is more or less all not so much just conspiracies, but I dabble in paranormal, monsters, aliens, all that shit.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done much with that kind of stuff, but I mean, my podcast is mostly about like government overreach and deception and stuff like that. But I mean, we get into all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the first episodes we had kind of talked about certain government things, and I had some issues here in the last couple of weeks about when I mentioned specific alphabet agencies. I start having internet issues. So, Big Brother listening, if you are.
Oh, I know they're listening to me.
Yeah. At this point, I don't really care if they are or not.
They're listening to all of us, man. They wrote all that shit into the Patriot Act a long time ago.
That's what I've had conversations with other people, not so much on my podcast, but just in general. I was like 20-something years ago now that everything changed, and it all changed with 9/11, which anyone ever talked to me, they kind of know how I feel about that too. So,
yeah, I think most of us understand that it was an inside job.
Yeah, there's a lot of I've not yet really went down that rabbit hole on any of my episodes, but it's definitely very flawed, and there's a lot of things they don't even mention, especially like Building 7 and stuff like that. It's
right.
It's just so sloppy and so dumb, but at this point that they just throw it out there and most people believe it, so whatever.
Yeah, and then, you know, people just believe whatever they see on the news, and you got to understand, like the stuff we're doing today with all the deep fake and, you know, how they can project commercials into the sky and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Blue Beam.
Well, the government's 30 to 50 years ahead of us. So, I mean, I'm not saying the planes didn't hit the building, but I mean, they could have easily deep faked that too if they just wanted to demo them on the building.
But I've never known of a building to collapse that had planes that hit it in the manner that it collapsed in, because it came down in a straight pattern, like a controlled demolition with floors exploding on the way down.
Absolutely.
That
It
was,
seems like common sense to, skeptics, but
and then Building 7 mysteriously collapsed. The 47-story building collapsed the same exact way as the two that got hit by airplanes that were
yeah,
that were
it's,
designed to withstand impacts from airplanes, and
yeah,
it wasn't even hit by anything, and it came down the same exact manner. But no one mentions that one.
yeah. I can remember hearing them talking about the World Trade Center, like on each side of the window would be an I beam. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just none of it adds up.
No, there's so much misinformation but again, they control the narrative, they control the media, they control everything else. So like they just spit out what they need to spit out, and everyone goes along with it. And a lot of people died that didn't need to die, but it all fit into the act of what they wanted to do. And then they had to do the Patriot Act and everything else, which gave them the rights to invade everyone's privacy. And here we are 22 years, 23 years later, and they listen to what we do.
Yeah. It's funny you brought up Fort Polk though, because like, I mean, my listeners are probably getting tired of hearing about Haiti, but I went to Haiti, and I haven't really talked about Fort Polk, and I didn't see any paranormal or nothing like that, but it's kind of interesting because so I was in the 10th Mountain Division out of Fort Drum, but that was back when I was on active duty. I did some National Guard and Army Reserve and all that crap afterwards, but so all the infantry units go through Fort Polk, and it's called JRTC, the Joint Readiness Training Center. And they so they put like lasers on the end of all the weapons, and they zero them in, and then everybody wears a harness and stuff, right? So they got like cadres walking around. So like if somebody aims a weapon at you or a vehicle or an aircraft or whatever, and it gets hit, the cadre comes and pulls your card. You carry a card in your right hand, chest pocket, right? So they'll pull your card, and then it says what kind of injury you got. It could be DOA, it could be leg injury, and then you got to come back in a week. But the thing about it is, so let's say like you got a truck coming that's and when you go out there, you're in the box for 2 weeks. They call it the box. And you're fighting Op 4, which is people that are stationed at Fort Polk, so they all know the land and the terrain, everything, and they're pretty much experts at all that shit because that's where they live and that's what they do. So it's hard to beat them.
Yeah.
And whoever scores the highest at Fort Polk, or I mean at JRTC, that'll be the first unit deployed when anything goes down. Well, okay, so every time a truck or an aircraft was trying to deliver us food or water, they kept getting hit. And I mean, this is war simulation. I mean, if a cadre sees somebody, fall out or something, of course they're gonna call the medics and take them in. But I mean, other than that, man, we weren't getting supplied with any food, any water, nothing. It was crazy. And we definitely went a week without food. And then the water supply was far and few between. Like like if somebody went down, we would go take their canteens and split it up. You know what I'm saying? But it was already gone because they weren't getting water either. So it was just like it changes you, man, because like you realize that food is so unimportant. Because like I went a week without food, and I never got hit either. So matter of fact, our unit scored the highest at JRTC, and I'm pretty sure to this day we're still the 10th mountain is the highest deployed unit. You know, because they're pretty hardcore, man. They take that shit seriously, so they're always training, and they don't take a lot of time off. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like we were deployed the whole time I was in there, except for like JRTC and crap like that in between. But we were busy the whole time. But like what I'm getting at is like when I got out of the box, I didn't give a shit about food, man. All I wanted was some water. You know what I'm saying? Like it just kind of brings realization about what the government is trying to do. Like they come up with this food pyramid and 3 meals a day and all this crap, and they don't do that anywhere else. You know, just the West. You know what I mean? I don't know, man. There's a lot of crap in our food now too. Um,
A lot of the preservatives and everything that gets added to the food today is not so much healthy for everyone. I think that's why there's such an uprise in diseases and everything else that we have, because I think a lot of it's from the chemicals and stuff they do with the crops and they do with the animals and all sorts of stuff.
yeah, the GMOs, and now overseas, I don't think they're doing it here yet, but they will. But they're putting the mRNA vaccines into the chickens and cattle overseas and stuff, which it's still, I mean, it might not be being done here yet, but we still eat that stuff. You know, if it gets shipped over here, we're already eating it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not crazy about all that stuff, but
It's strange because we actually have meat that are from a local farm and it's not got any additives or anything like that. It's just grass-fed beef, and for some reason it tastes different to me. I really don't like it. I guess I just like all that poison that I'm supposed to be eating.
oh yeah, man, that's the way it works. Like, fruit and vegetables, they've already got sugar in them, and they just taste plain to us because we've been, they pretty much brainwashed us. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's yeah, the whole thing. I mean, sometimes I sound like kind of a nutcase, but I don't know. I think it's been a long game for a lot of years. And
There's a lot of things that go on that I don't always feel like are in the best interest of society. I think they wanted to make it seem that way, but in actuality, it does more damage to us than it does any sort of benefit. Even these new modernized diets and everything else these people are doing, and we're trying to step away from this and that, it's too late. Your body's already somewhat been exposed to it, unless from the day you were born, you were never fed anything that wasn't processed by yourself and grown by yourself to know exactly what was in it.
right. And
Even,
and that's like the thing with the fluoride in our water. It's like I mean, I put a reverse osmosis system in our house, but if you read up on it, it's like it's pretty much irreversible after the first 2 years of your life. So I mean, my kids are way older than that. So it's like,
I,
once the damage is done, it can't be reversed.
I grew up on old, which we have it here too. We don't even drink it because it's nasty in general, but we have well water. So it's not got any fluoride in it, but instead we've got iron and other nastiness.
Yeah, hey, that's probably better than what you get in the city, man.
Yeah. So I've always been out in the country, so I've never grown up having to deal with real sewer and city and everything else, really. So I've just been,
Hey, that's good, man. That's good. And speaking of like, I've talked about this on a lot of my episodes too. Like my listeners are gonna get tired of it, but this is a swap cast, so it's for you and my listeners, so whatever. But so fluoride, there's no fluoride in the water like down in Utah, like around, I don't know if it's the whole state, but like Brigham Young University and the Mormon areas and stuff like that, they have zero fluoride in the water. And it also happens to be like a hot spot for recruiting CIA and FBI agents, stuff like that. I just find that super interesting.
I never heard that one before.
It's yeah. Like I'm repeating a lot of stuff I already talked about, but if they'll admit it, and so Mormons don't drink, they don't smoke, and they're basically claiming, yeah, and if you talk to a Brigham Young alumni, they'll tell you like, oh yeah, they're all over just recruiting, walking around the halls, and it's openly known. But if if you ask the FBI why, they'll say, oh well, they don't drink, they don't smoke, they usually have a pretty clean record that can pass a piss test, which makes sense. But
they're of the easily to be able to mold into what they need them to be because they're not really exposed to the lifestyles that a lot of other people are.
Right. And also, where are you at anyway?
Indiana.
Indiana. I'm in Ohio. I'm right on the Ohio-Michigan border.
Okay.
But what was I about to say now? I forgot. Shit. I lost my train of thought, man. I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, go ahead. What you got? Anything?
Well, I don't know what type of things you've really dived into on yours or anything, but far as on mine here recently, we've talked about, you mentioned a little bit, kind of like the technology and stuff they have out there. I think everyone's worried about this rise of AI and all the stuff like that that's like available to us. And I was like, just think about what's out there that we don't even know about, because if it's available for us to use, they have something at least 20 to 30 years better than what we have available. Everyone's talking about these deep fakes and everything else with the videos and stuff. It's like, that stuff's probably been going on for years and no one realizes it.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at with 9/11. Like, did those planes even really fly into the buildings? I mean, nothing survived, but amazingly, the passports of these people were found. You know what I'm saying? It's just ridiculous.
Again, anyone that can believe in the cover story has to seriously sit there and question things about how did a plane disintegrate? Not just the ones that hit the towers, but the one that they shot down out in, I think it was Pennsylvania, and then the one that hit conveniently in the Pentagon, which the day before the whole Pentagon thing, this $2.3 trillion was missing from the Pentagon's budget, and they were going to be doing some sort of investigation of trying to figure out where the money went. And conveniently, the area that was hit by the so-called plane is exactly where all the information of where that $2.3 trillion should be, and all of that was destroyed in that plane crash. It's like, well, that was convenient.
Right. Also in the World Trade Center, all these banks had like, vaults full of gold bars and shit like that. I'm sure that was all emptied out ahead of time.
From what I remember, and I'm sure this topic will probably get us banned from the old YT, but they've been doing a lot of scrubbing here in the last couple of years for anything that talks about stuff like this on the old tube. But they, when all that was going on, they had workers in there that were conveniently working on the shafts inside the buildings. They were painting things. They were working on the metal elevator systems, and they're all inside the inner workings of the towers. And all that was going on, but they were also doing stuff in the basements and the vault areas as well. So all that money and gold and stuff was moved from that location prior to the towers coming down.
Right.
I was like, well, that's again another convenience, I guess. That, and then there was a lot of workers that weren't actually at work that day. Same thing at the Pentagon. There was so many people that were supposed to be in that area, and I know people did die, but the number of people that were actually there to what there was normally there was substantially lower than what would usually be there.
Yeah, and the owner of the Twin Towers also didn't show up for work that day, nor did his daughter. And he also took out a huge insurance policy like a month before that or less.
I think one of the things that was put into the insurance policy is collapse and plane damages and stuff too.
Something about terrorists.
Yep.
Yeah.
I said, it's funny how all that plays out, but
yeah.
Again, anyone can look into it, make your own opinion. I'm just going by stuff that I've read and looked into myself, because even when all this happened, I had my own questions about it. Like, I remember watching it happen live on TV, and like the very next day, it didn't make any sense to me. Like, even when they collapsed, that was the first thing I thought. I was like, how did it fall straight down? Like,
exactly.
I'm a kid, and I'm a senior in high school watching this happen, and I'm already questioning why it fell straight down. Because to me, if something was going to fall, it came down like you see all those buildings being exploded when they controlled demolitions. And it's just convenient that that's how that boom, 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 all the way down. And you can see smoke from the videos from the floors beneath of it, smoke blowing out. Well, it was only the top several floors were damaged. So why was the stuff like 40, 60 floors below blowing out? Because there wouldn't have been any fire there.
And it's so obvious that, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, man. But you got two types of people in this world: people like us, and then people that just believe what they see on the news.
The things that it's going on right now, and I think it's a touchy subject just because it's recent, but these Maui fires and everything, to me, that is a straight up controlled situation as well. I'm not going to call it a false flag narrative or anything like it, but it's definitely being done on purpose, because conveniently none of the rich people's stuff was touched, but all the poor people and the native people from the areas and all their lands and stuff were the only things that got caught on fire. And now all of a sudden we get all these billionaires on TV saying, oh, help them by donating.
Oh yeah.
Oprah, get the fuck off my TV.
Man.
Like, how's Oprah and The Rock going to get on TV and tell everyone they need to help donate to the Red Cross? Well, you guys are like, have more money combined than almost everybody around here that's seeing the stupid commercial. Why aren't you donating? Oh, wait, you are donating. You're taking all the land from the people that you wanted to get it from originally.
Yeah, she's got like 100 acres, man. And then she was trying to build a road going from her property to wherever else. And the natives were like, no, we're not moving. And there was a fire that happened back then too. That was like, I don't know what, 2, 3, 5 years ago or something like that. And then all of a sudden she gets a road, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Again, it's all about the money and all about the people involved. And it's like I said, you didn't see her place get burnt. You didn't see what's his name, Zuckerberg's place, or any of these other celebrities that have all this land out there and all these big mansions. Conveniently, the fire only jumped to this house, over to this house, missed this one. And then there's things floating around, and I don't know how true this is. Again, it's one of those things I was reading, but anything that had like a blue tarp, blue roof, anything like that, never got touched. I was like, well, that's funny. And they claim there's some sort of a laser system that if you use blue, it won't touch the things with the blue. I was like, well, I don't know about any of that, but it does seem strange that people were painting their roofs blue in the last couple of weeks before all the fires happened.
Yeah, I don't know about people painting the roofs, but there's definitely there's a Space Force base in Maui, and it has a direct energy weapon on it. So, I mean, that's all I know about that. I mean, I do know that so they were trying to get a lot of these natives, they don't trust the government already because the United States has already fucked them over hard enough. But
That
they don't
seems to
want to
be what they
leave.
do.
Right. They don't want to leave. Yeah. Lahaina is like a holy land for these natives, right? So they're not wanting to leave that area. Well, FEMA and Red Cross are trying to bring them food and water, right? Well, they're like, no, we can't bring it in there. You got to come to this FEMA camp we set up, which is outside of, the area that they're. A lot of people think they just want to take it over and bulldoze it and build whatever,
It wouldn't
15-minute cities or whatever you want to call it, or
it wouldn't surprise me
right. So
because the area is a very lucrative area, very financially gaining area. If you own all that land, just think about all the stuff you can build there and all the other rich people that will want to be out there spending their money because it's a paradise.
right. I mean, it could be the conspiracy of 15-minute cities and digital cities, or it could just be the government trying to, build up tourism, build hotels and, resorts and shit like that. It could be anything.
A lot of
It's
that
hard.
land that burned was protected, like protected for the tribes, like the actual natives for Maui and like the indigenous people and everything else. And it was like their sacred areas and some of their protected areas. And conveniently, that's what burnt to the ground.
Right. Yeah.
And now the government's offering to take all that land to help the poor people out there. I was like, you're not helping anybody. You're taking all their stuff from them just to benefit your own self.
Yeah. Well, they're not budging, last I heard. And then people are coming in on like boats and trying to sneak them food and supplies, and FEMA and the Red Cross, they got the National Guard out there trying to discourage these people from doing that. They're trying to get in their way and all kinds of shit. It's
Why would you
crazy.
try to discourage people for wanting to help?
Right. They're claiming it's about safety as usual. Safety is you know, safety is the easiest way to take away somebody's freedom, you know. Just like something else we've been going through for about past three years or so. You know what I'm saying?
The beast era is what we
Yeah,
call it on my other podcast because there's a certain word
yeah,
we can't say, but we call it the whole beast era. Yeah, I saw something about this recently, and I don't know how true it is, but claims that people that were told that they had to do a certain thing in order to keep their job or to keep healthy or stuff like that, those things that were put under your skin. We won't dive into that too much, but they're more susceptible now to these newer waves coming through because more than people that weren't. I was like, well,
oh
that's
yeah,
interesting. I was like, that's interesting because literally like a year and a half ago, everyone that didn't do that were the reason the whole thing was still going on. And I was like, oh, but now the ones that are supposedly had those and their second or third ones are more at risk of catching things. I was like, that's interesting to find out, I guess.
yeah. Well, I didn't end up doing it. I thought I was gonna have to because and I wound up getting into it with my in-laws and stuff on Thanksgiving a couple years ago. But when Biden came out and said anybody with 300 or more employees, and he just said it like it was law already. You know what I'm saying? And he just pulled that right out of his ass, and it wound up not being true. So I was telling my wife, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. I said I might do it just to keep my job because I work at a big plant, and then my in-laws came over for Thanksgiving, and my mother-in-law overhears me talking to my brother-in-law, and I'm like, I ain't doing it, man. I'll start driving truck. I don't give a shit. And she's like, oh, you. And my wife is from Thailand, so my mother-in-law was like, "Oh, you afraid of a little prick, huh?" I'm like, "No, I ain't afraid of shit. I'm afraid of what's in it." I said, "You guys can get what you want. I ain't getting nothing." And I started getting fired up. My wife's like, "Hey, I thought you said you might get it. You might or might not get it." And I'm like, and I was already pissed off. So I'm like, "Yeah, it just depends what kind of mood I'm in." you know. So that's what happens, man. People, it's splitting people up.
That's the whole point of it, is to
Yeah, that's the
divide and
whole point.
conquer.
Yep.
I've said that about a lot of things. It's like the two-party system, all this stuff. I said the government isn't ran by a two-party system. The government is ran by a bunch of people all in the same mindset of making everyone else seem like they're giving a shit about you, and they're really not. It's all about distracting, dividing, and keeping everyone guessing and mad at each other, because it's easier to control people that are hating each other rather than a group of unified people.
Right. And so I don't know if you ever listen to Tim Dillon podcast. You ever heard of that?
No, I haven't. I'm not one. It's weird. I do a podcast, but I'm not very familiar with other podcasters. I only started doing podcasting last year because I stopped doing band stuff and I have all this recording equipment. So I was like, I might as well use it.
I hear a lot of that. That's it's more common than you probably think.
So
But
no,
anyway,
I'm not too big in the whole podcast thing. I only know like a couple different ones. So
yeah, I don't listen to a whole bunch. But this dude's a comedian. He's pretty funny. And he claims he's gay, but he's like a conservative. And so, I mean, I don't really, how can you just tell somebody they're lying? But he doesn't act like it at all. So like he gets away with making gay jokes and all kinds of stuff. It's funny, man. I mean, but anyway, he had RFK on his show today or yesterday or whenever it was. And that dude, man, his voice is so screwed up you can hardly make out what he's saying because he got vaccine injury or whatever. And I mean, a lot of conspiracy people don't like him, but he was making a lot of sense, man. But I mean, that's what they do. He's a politician. They got to know, they got to know what to say and how to make everybody happy. But he's never going to get a seat on the DNC talking about the shit he talks about.
no, I think that whole era of what a Democrat and a Republican, they all kind of flipped back after the whole JFK thing, which again, I also, tinfoil hat man over here, I think that was another inside job, but we won't go down that one tonight.
Well, yeah, he actually said that too, because that was his uncle.
Yeah.
And he talked about that, but I mean,
I feel like his dad was killed off as well.
who was Robert Kennedy?
Yeah.
Wasn't he like what was his position at that time?
He was also a senator, I thought.
Okay.
But he died too, I'm pretty sure. I'm not going to quote myself. I guess I could look it up, but I thought he was killed too. I thought he died mysteriously or something.
Well, there was like 3 of them. I mean, and then people get on his dad because he was a bootlegger. And it's like, we've got into this. Like I've been on other shows and somebody started talking shit about Joe Kennedy. And I'm like, wait a minute. I thought we were against the government. I said, if the government came out today and told me that I'm not allowed to have any more alcohol, I'd be fucking at least making my own, if not selling it to other people. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know how much of a criminal he really was, because I'm kind of like that too, Who knows,
There's a lot of people I think do that. Like, it's the mindset, and anyone can relate to this, I think. Everyone breaks the law one way or the other. And I don't care. I don't care if they say they don't. Well, I never break the law. Do you go over the speed limit? Like, even if you just went 1 mile an hour over, you're technically breaking the law. So anyone out there driving or anybody doing anything like that, you ever walked across the street, even though it said do not walk? Like, there's all sorts of things that technically you've broken the law. So the government's telling you can't do this, you do it anyways. How are you going to judge someone else that was doing something this way? Like if you're not out there committing murders or serial rapist or anything like that, petty little things like, oh, they used to sell, I got caught because I smoked a joint. I went to jail for that. Oh, you're a bad criminal because you smoked a joint back in the 1980s. Like, that's stupid.
Yeah. Or running moonshine. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, fuck, if you don't think the government's right for doing it, you're basically like acting like Robin Hood, right?
Yeah.
You know?
That's what the world needs today is a modernized Robin Hood, steal from the rich, give it back to us poor people.
Or a few million of us.
The problem is anyone that steals from the rich is going to keep it for themselves because that's just what society's become. We're all greedy, selfish assholes.
Yeah, pretty much, man.
But yeah, I don't know if there's anything, you said you had some topics you want to dive into. I don't know if you got anything that you really want to go down.
No, I mean, I wrote down a few things because you're into like paranormal stuff, and I ain't got a lot. So I wrote down a few things that I've experienced.
Okay.
So the very first one I had was, I'm gonna say I was like in the 4th or the 5th grade, and I had a dream that night, and this woman, she was dressed in like she was a pretty big woman, like overweight woman, and she was dressed in like a muumuu dress. Like, it sounds like I'm about 10 years older than you. So you remember Three's Company?
Yeah, I remember that.
All right, Mrs. Roper.
Wasn't she the neighbor?
Well, she was the landlord's wife.
Okay.
With the red hair.
Okay.
But she used to wear like a muumuu dress and like a bead necklace. All right, so this lady in my dream, she was dressed like that, like, but she wasn't thin like that, so she was like overweight. And I can't remember like if she and like I said, I was a kid, so I was only like in the 4th or 5th grade, and she like tried to have sex with me, or like, I can't remember if it was oral sex or what was going on. So I didn't know shit about it back then. I can't even remember. But the next day, I went into art. It was either art class or music class, because we did that like once a week. I walk in there, and it's the same lady, and she's dressed the exact same way. And I just sat there. She probably thought I was like a special needs kid. Like, I sat there with my mouth hanging open, like I was fucking shocked. It was the weirdest thing, man. It was like I never seen her before in my life. It's like I seen the future. You know what I mean? It's not much of a story, but I'll never forget it, man. That was like at least 40 years ago.
It's funny that you mentioned that because, ironically, just an hour and a half ago, I was talking to my wife, and this happens a lot with me, and I still don't really understand it, but I get deja vu very, very frequently, and every time I do, it creeps me out, and I get like a weird, like, almost nauseous, like, punch in my stomach from it, like, when I realize it happens. And we were talking about something, and I'd said something, and she responded, and I've seen this. I've been there before. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost not like seeing the future or whatever, but it's like I hate it because I get deja vu so often. I don't know how to explain that, but like when you mentioned seeing in the future, it literally just made me think of that. I was like, not even like 90 minutes ago, I was having a conversation and got freaky deja vu again.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of times I should have been dead too. Like, like before I went in the military, we used to drive around drinking a lot and stuff. I'm back home. I was from Akron. I moved up up here now, I'm closer to Michigan, but we drive around drinking all the time. And okay, so we're driving around looking for this party out in the country. And so like out in the country, they got the ditches alongside of the road, the deep ditches.
Mm-hmm.
So we're coming. Well, I mean, I was passed out at this time. I already fell asleep. The dude driving. So I'm guessing he passed out too because we were on a curved road. And this was back in probably like the early 90s. And instead of making the curve, he just went straight down into this ditch. Like I said, it was back in the 90s. So the car he had bucket seats, right? And so the whole bucket seat came up off of the floor and shot me through the windshield he ran into the steering wheel and busted his nose up and stuff. But I went right through the fucking windshield and was laying on the hood. And I must have been out for a while because when I woke up, I kind of sat up and there was no cars out there, nothing. Like I said, this is out in the middle of the country, nothing. And I turned around, look up the street. He's way up the street. So I was out for a little while anyway. And I'm like, hey. And then he comes back and I start walking to him and he's like, oh shit, man, I thought you were dead, And so the paramedics came and all that, and they told me the only reason I didn't break my neck was because I was already asleep, because I was relaxed. But I mean, that happened, and then I've been through 2 windshields, so I mean, it was similar to that, but it was the same thing. Like I just should have been dead a lot of times, man. And I came up in kind of a shitty neighborhood, and I've been knocked. I was also a boxer for about 20 years, but I've been knocked out in the streets, fighting several people more times than I've been knocked out in the ring. And I had guns pulled on me and stuff, and I just I figured, nah, this dude, he ain't got the balls. And then I would just start fighting. And then I find out a little while, a year later or something, he's in prison for murder, and then all the stuff that happened overseas, I mean, I should have been dead so many times, man.
There is something, and I'm trying to see where it's at. I can't think of what it's actually called, but there is a belief amongst people. I wouldn't call it a conspiracy, but certain people believe that there are different lives that we all have. I wouldn't, like maybe a multiverse or where you should die in this one, but you keep going, but you actually died, but your body and life keeps going, but you just went into a different reality, I guess, because they say they've noticed, like they were like you said, go through a windshield, and they wake up and then they go on about life, but they're just small little minute details that are a little bit different from what they remember previously before they went through something like that. You ever experienced anything like that you're aware of?
No, man. Back then I wasn't. It's kind of like, to me, I feel like I matured later than other people my age. You know what I mean? Because I was just I had like a wild streak. I was just like a fucking nutcase. Like, and I always thought I would be dead by the time I was 30. So I just, I was just running around acting like an idiot. And
I think we've all done that.
Yeah. But I mean, I think I did it a little bit too long. I mean, I'm like 50 now, and I'll say like 10 years ago, I finally started acting like a grown up, I'm not proud of it, but I mean, that's just the way it is, man.
I did my fair share of stupid things, but I feel like I kind of calmed down when I was about my mid-20s.
There you go. Well, 15 years earlier than me.
I was doing the whole up until the last 5.5 years ago. I got with my wife, and she already had 2 kids, so that kind of made me mature a little bit more than we had 2 of our own kids together. So I've got
Yeah.
4 in the house, so the dad life has taken over, so I don't really do the stupid lifestyle that I used to, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll do it, man. I mean, I met my wife in like 99, so she definitely helped me. And
Yeah.
I probably would be dead by now if it wasn't for her. But
Se- Seems to be how it works. Find a good
yeah.
person to be with and straighten
Yeah.
your ass out.
Yeah. Saved my ass. So where you at on religion?
That's a touchy subject with me. I am not a religious person, but I'm not against what anyone believes. I just don't really. I believe that there is a higher power. There has to be, or something. I want to believe that there is, but I don't necessarily know what it is. So I'm not going to argue with someone if they believe one way or the other. I mean,
Yeah.
that's up for them. Whatever makes them happy, it doesn't really affect me any.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of answered prayers, and I don't necessarily believe in like Jesus Christ. I mean, the so his name wasn't Jesus. They called him the Christ, which I think it means like the chosen. The Christ means the chosen one in whatever language. So like when Jesus was walking the earth, they spoke Armenian, right? Or Aramaic, my bad. They spoke Aramaic, and Aramaic didn't even use J's, right? So some people say his name was Yeshua, but it doesn't really matter. Like when I pray, I just pray to God because I don't know. I don't trust. It goes all the way back to the Romans, government. So like, and like, what was it, like 325 AD? Uh, Constantine formed the Council of Nicaea and decided which books could be in the Bible and which couldn't. And I don't know, was he? I think he was like a pope or something like that. He was some kind of government leader. And I don't trust any of the popes these days either. I don't trust the Vatican. I don't
No.
really, yeah, I'm not into organized religion, but like when I pray every morning, but I just pray to God. And it's all about your, what's the word? It's all about your intention. You know what I mean? Like if you're some kind of, gothic dude that wants to, maybe there is more than one God. I don't know. But I mean, if you're some kind of gothic dude and you want to pray to some evil thing, you'll probably get that. But I don't pray that way. I ask for, I'm basically just thankful every day, that I woke up and thankful for the things that I have. Once in a while, I'll give you an example. All right. So at work, I work in an auto plant, and they do this, the company does this thing where they got the nurses come out and they'll do like a wellness check on us, just to cover their ass and act like they give a shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'll take our blood pressure, do blood work, and all that type of crap. And so there's one, and they give us free T-shirts. That's probably half the reason some of these people do it. Oh yeah, I'll go get my free T-shirt and get like 5 minutes off of the line or whatever. So I went over there, and she's taking my blood pressure, and then she goes, "Man, your blood pressure is like really high." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm probably pissed off." And he's like, "No, it's like super high." And I'm like, "Well, some of these people piss me off. I mean, doesn't that do it?" And she's like, "Not this much." So I'm like, "Oh shit." Right. And I just happened to have a doctor's appointment that afternoon. Well, she went on and did the rest of her stuff. And so I'm driving to my doctor's appointment, and I prayed, and I'm like, God, I said, I ain't gonna take none of these pills that they tried to prescribe people. I said, I'm not doing that. I said, help me. I'm not doing this. And then all of a sudden, and I hardly ever get tired until bedtime, right? All of a sudden I started getting super sleepy, which is so unusual, right? So then I get to the doctor's office. I checked in. I said, all right, yeah, here's my name. And it's like, all right, we'll call you when it's ready. And I just like sat in a chair and I was just like, couldn't stay awake. I'm over there falling asleep. And so finally they come out and call me, and I go into the appointment, and the nurse takes my blood pressure, and she's like, and I forgot to say, I do get pissed off a lot. I get angry, and I got a little bit of anger issues. But anyway, so I go in there, and the nurse takes my blood pressure, and she's like, oh, 120/80 is perfect. And I'm just thinking like, oh, yeah, I just need to relax. You know what I mean? I mean, if I couldn't figure that out on my own, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that's nothing supernatural. None of this stuff that I'm talking about is, but it could be.
I think when you dive in with religion in general, it does have a supernatural element to it because, again, you're believing in a spirit or a god or something like that. So it's not something that we normally would run into daily. So it does have that element of, I don't know if it's supernatural in general, but like an otherworldly element to itself.
Yeah.
But no,
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't really, kind of like what you said, I don't really go with organized religion because I believe every organized religion is a form of control.
Yeah.
And I just think as long as you're a good person, we know what's a good person. I touched on this earlier. You're not out killing people. You're not out hurting people, doing bad things to people. Trying to be a good person, living a good life, doing the best you can. I feel like if there is a God and you're a good person, and if there is an afterlife, then maybe you should be rewarded with that. But I also go back to the conscience of why are we even here if you believe in the all-knowing, all-seeing, already knows what's going to happen God, even though we have free will, even though that doesn't really exist because he already knows what you're going to do, even with your free will. What is the point of us living this life just to see if we go to heaven or hell? Are we just like a game? Like, that's where I start to question the whole religious aspect is like, what's the point?
Right.
But
I mean, a lot of people in our circle, conspiracies and stuff, they tend to get not really, most of them don't really believe in organized religion, but it comes back to something. You know what I mean? Like there's not a lot of atheists and stuff like that talk about the stuff we're talking about. I mean, it could be, and it doesn't really, I mean, nobody knows for sure.
nobody knows. And kind of like anybody that talks about these conspiracy topics as well, like we have our own opinions. Same thing with people that see the stuff like what I deal with, that people that say they've been abducted by aliens, well, for example. I don't know if they've really been abducted by aliens, but they believe they have been, so who am I to tell them that they're wrong? I've never seen an alien, but it doesn't mean that the aliens don't exist. And then I've got
Right.
people that say space doesn't exist. So it's like
Yeah. Oh, you mean like the flat Earth people?
yeah, I've got a flat Earth episode, and I will say this, and I've said it on other stuff. A lot of the things that they talk about, if you look into it, it's almost like a rabbit hole where you start to dig in there, and some of the things do make sense, and it makes you start questioning stuff. But do I believe that the Earth is 100% flat and there's hidden world out there? I don't know. Is space real or whatever? I assume so. I don't see the point of why they'd hide everything from us and make up this big story that there's space and the Earth is round and everything else. I don't see. It's too big of a conspiracy to keep controlled. Like it's a whole world have to be involved in that. And to me, it seems strange. Like, and for
Well,
what benefit?
when you look at how much money goes to NASA every year, that's one hell of a good reason. And it was also started by the Nazis. You know, Werner von Braun was the one that he was running NASA when the moon landing happened and all that, or the supposed moon landing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I talk about him a little bit too much too. Like I was telling him, I got a co-host that comes on every once in a while. I was telling him like, all right, today I'm going to try not to talk about Haiti or Werner von Braun. But you know, but like as far as flat Earth goes, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't really matter. It could be any kind of shape, but it doesn't matter. But there, even if it is around Earth, there still could be a whole bunch of shit on the other side of Antarctica. You talk about Operation High Jump.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Antarctica is a topic that I've always wanted to do a episode with someone that's actually done a lot of research on it, because I think the whole Antarctica thing is a very strange topic just to go into, because again, what went on in Antarctica to where every country decided it's going to be off limits from everyone else unless they have permission from all of the governments to come here. Like,
Yeah.
it's just supposedly ice. So what is so sacred about this ice that they don't want anyone there for?
All right. I hate to bring this up, but you know who Werner von Braun is, right?
I know he was one of the German scientists, I believe, wasn't he, during the Nazis era, but I don't know a whole lot about him.
Yeah, he was one of Hitler's main dudes. You know, he was a rocket scientist, and the United States brought him over and assigned him to be the head of NASA.
Project Paperclip or something like that, wasn't it? They
Yeah,
brought
the
over all
rat
those.
lines,
Yeah.
you know, Red Claws. I mean, I talk about this shit a couple, 2 or 3 times already, man. My people are gonna get tired of hearing about. But anyway, what I wanted to get to here, and I've talked about this a couple times too already. But so when he was dying, he was he called this lady that he worked with, and she worked for the military industrial complex, and so did he. They worked with the same company. He called her to his deathbed because he got they said he had terminal cancer. So he knew he was dying. He's like, all right, I want you to be my spokesperson. And he told her the whole list of all these been used to establish a new world order. And the final one was aliens, Project Bluebeam. But anyway, when he was telling her all this, he said that the German NASA program is in Antarctica. He said his main job was just to influence all the Americans about this, or influence them and basically trick them into telling them about all these, rocket propelled spaceships and stuff. That so he was basically saying that NASA was just all bullshit. And so you got like 8 billion. They're getting like $8 billion a year or some shit like that. That's a hell of an incentive.
Yeah. I guess again, like I said, when you start looking into certain things, and that's where the whole Antarctica is another flat Earth thing, that there's supposed to be whole worlds beyond Antarctica. I don't know one way or the other, and it doesn't impact my life. This is what I've said before. I don't care if the Earth is round, flat,
Right.
whatever. Life still sucks 90% of the time anyway, so it
Yeah,
doesn't matter to me.
that's where I'm at too. It's like I don't really care what shape the Earth is, and there's people that'll get fucking super pissed off if you don't. You know, they want to argue about flat Earth, and it's like, fuck's the difference, man? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, the moment you tell someone you don't really care, you're a globe-tard. Or if you tell someone you're a flat earther, then you're laughed at by them. Like again, it's another one of those topics that's here to divide people because no one can agree on anything. We're just programmed to hate each other and fight with each other 99% of the time. And you find that 1% that you might get along with, but eventually they'll hate you too.
Yeah.
Seems to be humans in general. But I
Right.
I look at it as, again, there's all sorts of things out there that we don't know about and we're never going to know about just because they don't want us to know about it. And who are we to figure it out? Like, we might have our own ideas, but we don't have the money to build a rocket and fly up there and take a
Right.
look around ourselves.
That's
So
what it's all about, money.
everything's about the money. I don't know. You probably touched on this before, but I never thought we went to the moon back in the 60s because I thought it was strange. We only went up there a couple times. We completely quit going in, like, what, 1972 or 73. They made like a few missions up there and had a couple other people that walked on the moon, but you don't really hear about that often. You only hear about the first time we went.
Right.
And then how they managed to have video of them landing and walking out there, live streaming it. I was like,
Right.
how did they have live stream from the moon and made it all the way back to Earth? And communication should have had a delay from the time span because at that point they didn't have the satellite systems they do to control talking and everything. Like, none of that stuff ever made any sense to me. Like,
What about when Nixon called him on the landline?
exactly. Like, there's so many dumb little things about that. People try and disprove it, but
the fucking spacecraft looked like a fucking sardine can. It was a piece of shit.
I don't know if there's been video. I've not looked into it that much, but how did they get off of the moon? If they had to have a rocket to leave Earth, how the hell they get off of the moon? If they say the moon's gravity wasn't as strong as Earth's, but they were still driving a vehicle and walking on it. So I don't understand the difference of that aspect, I guess.
And what about the rover? When you say vehicle, right?
Yeah.
Motherfucking rover was bigger than the spacecraft.
Yeah.
How'd they get it there?
Yeah.
But I did a whole episode about the fake moon landing. He was an independent filmmaker, and he claimed that he interviewed Stanley Kubrick about the moon, staging all these moon landings and stuff. And he said he did the first one, and then, they had great numbers, and then they wanted to do a second one, and nobody gave a fuck. And then they tried to do a third one, so they wanted to spark it up and play golf up there and crap. It all kind of made sense.
I've always wondered how about, like, when you see them walking, you don't really see stars in the sky. I mean, we can look up here and you can see the stars. They're like, well, that's the atmosphere. The lights up there, it's so bright. I'm like, it's so bright that you can't see the stars, but you see everything black.
Yeah. And what about the shadows?
That go in multiple directions.
Right. From what?
Yeah.
I would say stars, but you don't see any.
I've never quite understood the moon is locked in with our rotation, so we always see the same exact face of the moon, no matter what. Like, to me, that seems... I'm not a scientist. I guess they can explain it scientifically, and it makes me sound stupid if you believe in the science, but at the same time, it just seems odd that we're always locked in no matter where we're at with a moon that always looks directly at us. The moon doesn't rotate then. Like, I don't...
Or what about when the sun's still up and you can happen to see the moon also?
Yeah.
That doesn't go with the science either.
Again, those are all topics that get brought up on the whole flat earth thing. And again, like I said, when you start looking into that, and there's a lot of things that make you start scratching your head. And I said, I'm not going to say I'm a flat earther, and I'm not going to say I'm a globetard. I'm just someone that doesn't care at this point.
Right.
But
and we got about an hour in.
I don't know if you, I won't put this one on my own episode here, but if you want your listeners to hear what kind of got me into doing my own podcast, I'll talk about that here for you. But
it's like, man, it's kind of like an NPC, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to think for yourself. I don't know. I don't want to get into all that crap, but it's just like, how can you fucking drive past something like that and then just want to
pretend
dismiss it because you're worried about what people think?
Yeah. And again, like I said, I've tried to rationalize it and write it off more than accept it, but I've gotten to the point now after I started this podcast, because that's what got me wanting to interview people, because I felt like I couldn't talk about this because of people are going to look at you and think you're crazy. Like, I know what I saw. I've never seen anything like that again. And for so long, I've looked for every way I can to say it was something else, because I don't really want to believe that what I saw was some weird cryptid animal that shouldn't exist. Some people are like, well, it's probably a bear. Well, I couldn't say yes, it was a bear, but here's the problem. We don't
Sounds
really
like it
have
was thinner, right?
the dog thing was not a bear. I know the difference between a dog and a bear. And they're like, well, maybe it was a baby bear. I mean, I'm not stupid. I know what a bear looks like. Um, my thing is, we don't have bears here in Indiana, but on the flip side, we also don't have walking on its hind legs dogs around here either. So it's like, so I can't really, I won't say it was a bear. It was not a bear and it was a dog man. I'm not going to go out on my way and say it's one or the other, because again, I don't know. And I've talked to other people on their podcasts, like, oh, that was a dog man. It was definitely a Wendigo or a shapeshifter and all these other type of things. I was like, or a skinwalker. I seen it when it was is transforming and stuff like that. I was like, man, I don't know about any of this stuff. I don't know if I believe any of this stuff. Like, so I started interviewing people, and people have got some really, really crazy stories that if I was listening to it and never had any type of experience, I was thinking just like everyone else, well, these people clearly are crazy or on drugs or whatever. But it's to the point now to where I'm like, how can I say this about people? Because people can say the same thing about me. Because now I'm one of those people that are like,
well, you've heard about Skinwalker Ranch, right?
Yeah.
The portals and all that. It's just,
that's where I kind of go with what I think about is, the more I've looked into these weird encounters and these weird cryptids and stuff, there's a lot of ties into these weird portals. And it's where I kind of am leaning to these days is, I feel like whatever these animals are, whatever these things are that people are seeing, I feel like they're not from this world. Not that they're aliens or anything like that, but I guess they could be in the term of, I think they're from a different reality and they somehow get brought into ours.
I don't know if it's like next dimension.
Yeah, like a different higher dimension or whatever, a portal to that. That would explain why you don't see them all the time. They happen to be here, then all of a sudden they're gone. And
well, I think, in my opinion, you like if somebody's doesn't have an open mind, isn't open to that, then they're never going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's only a certain kind of people that do see that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they're trying to come out. I believe they're trying to come out with the Project Bluebeam pretty soon. And I think that's why they changed the name to UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenons, instead of UFOs, because UFO has kind of become like a hillbilly thing. You know what I mean? So now these higher class people can still feel good about themselves, like, oh yeah, I seen a UAP. You know what I mean?
It makes it now I know what you're saying. It makes it to where basically they're not like one of those crackpots like me that said, oh, I seen a UFO. They're more of the better, higher position people in the food chain that they could be like, right. I seen a UAP, and they don't sound like one of those tinfoil hat crazy people like me.
Yeah, it's a UAP, as opposed to these trailer park hillbillies that see UFOs. No, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? When you told me that it looked like it had a blanket, or looked like it had a blanket wrapped around it?
It looked like it was wearing a cloak or a blanket wrapped around, like something was hiding its top of its body, like I couldn't see arms or a head on it.
First thing I thought of was like wings. You know, when wings are folded up?
Yeah, like wrapped around itself.
Does that make any sense?
I mean, it's a possibility. Again, like I said, I have no idea what that was. I've not seen anything that someone's described like that. People have said there is something called Fresno crawlers, and I've looked those up. That is not what I saw. Those are white, and they have like a bulbous top to it. This thing did not. It literally looked like a set of legs with a torso. And
you had your headlights on it, right? And it was just black?
It was black. I didn't see hair. I didn't see clothing. I didn't see fur or anything like that. It was just like a black figure. And it wasn't like translucent to where I could see through it. Like it blocked off the light. Like you could see it. And you could see between its legs. Like you could see the road as it walked between its legs. But you could see where its legs were stopping the visibility, and it stopped the light going around it. Like it was a solid object. But I don't know. Like I said, I'd never seen a head. I didn't see arms. And it wasn't like I only saw it for like a second. I literally was stopped as it walked past me. So I was there for at least 5 to 10 seconds of it walking past me. So it's like I come up on it, had to swerve to miss it. I basically come to a stop to let it walk around me. And like I said, it's walking in this weird swaying pattern. Like it would take one step and lean to the left and one step and lean into the right and then one back to the left. Like it just was walking and his body was moving as it took a step. Like it was super heavy. Like you'd think like I don't want to call it like a giant, but like just like the whole vibe, but like how mental picture of how like it would be walking, like kind of like thumping as it walked like that. Someone's like, well, it was Bigfoot. I was like, again, it didn't look like a Bigfoot because it didn't have any arms. It didn't have a head. I don't know. Unless they have headless horseman Bigfoot or something out there. I don't know.
Jeez, yeah.
An amputee Sasquatch, maybe.
Yeah.
But no, I think stuff like that, like what I've been doing, like I've interviewed people that's seen Bigfoot, and they've seen these dogmans, and they've seen all these other things. I'm starting to think that maybe the stuff that these people are seeing are tied into a different dimension to where they just blend into ours. And then that's even with paranormal experience, like ghosts and stuff like that. Maybe like shadow people, if people see these things like the Predator, when it's like cloaked or whatever. Yeah. I've had a lot of people reporting like they've seen things like that out in the woods. They've seen stuff like that in the cities, and like it's like who knows? Who really knows at this point?
With all the trail cams and stuff that we got nowadays, but they probably know how to detect that shit. I mean, it's hard to say.
That's why I'm always skeptical, because everyone has a phone, and every phone should have a camera these days. People have Ring and all these doorbell cameras on their houses, and people have all these security cameras on their businesses and all these trail cams for hunting. But for whatever reason, we never get a clear shot of any of these creatures that everyone else sees with their eyes. But for whatever reason, every picture's fucking blurry.
Right. Well, that would explain the interdimensional thing,
Yeah.
They're probably on a little bit higher level than us. They got a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more abilities.
We see in the 3D realm, and they claim there's like 9 different dimensions, supposedly. So who the hell's to say was in the 4th and 5th dimension?
Right. Have you read the Kybalion?
I have not. I'm not much of a reader.
Oh, that's kind of like, I guess it's like the Archons or the Gnostics or something like, but they say, I think it's like eight dimensions, and I don't know.
Yeah.
But
again, that's stuff that like I don't think we'll ever figure out for real. It's all just guessing at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're going on an hour and a half now, so if you're gonna wrap this one up, we can get to it. But unless there's anything else you want to talk about.
No, that's about it, man. Go ahead and plug your podcast and stuff for my listeners, then I'll do it for yours. And
yep.
hopefully mine like what you're talking about, and they'll come listen to you, and vice versa.
Yeah.
What it's about.
Well, again, my podcast is called Tinfoil Tales, where I interview people who have experiences, or some topics are conspiracy. Like I said, we've got a flat earth guest on there. a lot of it, I've had people with paranormal experiences, Sasquatch sightings, Dogman. I've been doing some episodes here in the past, and I've got some coming up where people believe they've been abducted by aliens, and some actually think that the government are involved with these aliens, and they do these age regressions. They take their subconsciousness and they place them into a clone, and they send them out through space to do all this work, and then they bring them back, and then they have all these memories regressed. And
I've heard that.
yeah, I've got episodes on that. There's a lot of different things that my podcast dives into. So if you're into weird stuff, weird stories, weird experiences, check out Tinfoil Tales. It's on YouTube. It is on all the streaming platforms, and we're on all the social networks. So most active on Facebook. So if anyone wants to find us on Facebook, you can give me a like, talk to me on there. And if anyone wants to reach out and has an experience that they would like to share, and when you want to be on an episode, you can send me an email. It's tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com. And we can talk about it, get you scheduled for a future episode.
All right, cool.
Where can everyone find your podcast at?
We're Conspiracy Soldiers Podcast. It's an audio podcast, but on most all podcast platforms. And we talk about like a variety of things, a lot of government overreach, altered history. You know, like I said, we had one on the fake moon landing, all kinds of stuff like that. I get into a lot of like religion, not, religion as opposed to, like organized religion.
Mm-hmm.
So like some of the older stuff like that. But so you can find us on Instagram at Conspiracy Soldiers, and you can email us at conspiracysoldiers@yahoo.com. That's about it, Brandon.
Yep. I'm going to say, anyone out there still listening, I appreciate you guys. But yeah.
Yeah, man. It was a pretty good talk, even though I almost pissed myself.
Well,
but
it's been fun.
Yeah, let's get back together one of these times, man.
Yeah, I might have you come back on here relatively soon, because there was some stuff I'd like to talk about the moon landing, and I'd also like to do some deep dives eventually on Antarctica. So whatever you got about Antarctica, might do some discussions on that.
All right. Yeah, give me a heads up ahead of time, because I was all over the fucking map tonight.
That's usually how these go when I deal with people. It just kind of goes off the rails half the time.
Yeah, that's how we do it too, man. I think it's better that way, though. You know what I mean?
I like it to where you never know what's going to happen. So when people want to tell me their stories and experiences, they want to write them all out and send them to me first. I usually don't want to hear about it all the way. Like, just send me some details of what it's about. But I like to listen. That way I don't know what to expect. It makes it more interesting for me.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, again, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming out and talking with me.
Thanks to you, man. Thanks for coming, and it was great.
Yep. Well, have a good night, and everyone out there listening, thanks for listening. Have a good night, too. And that's going to do the show tonight. Again, thanks to Fox. Thanks to Conspiracy Soldiers Podcast. Again, I recommend everyone to go out there, find him on social media, find him on the streaming platforms, give his podcast a listen. I think it's something you guys will really enjoy. And if you want to be on an episode of Tinfoil Tales, just send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com. We'll get you scheduled on a future episode. But again, look up Fox on Spotify, Apple, any of those streaming platforms. And I think, again, you guys will really enjoy what he's got going on over there. Definitely reaches some topics that I would like to get into. So we'll definitely have him back on here in the next few weeks or so. But again, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. And on that note, we're going to roll it out. So good night, everyone.